The wind howled across the ice fields of Kepler 442c, like a monster that never slept. Inside the metal walls of Colony Station 7, the heaters worked harder each day but gave less warmth. The power cells were dying one by one, and everyone knew it. Mina pressed her small face against the frozen window of the common room. Her breath made little clouds on the glass as she watched the endless white outside. She was only 5 years old, but she understood that something bad was happening. The grown-ups whispered a lot now, and they stopped talking when she came near. "Mina, come away from there," said Jiwon, the woman who used to teach the colony children before most of them left with their families. Now only 3 children remained, and Mina was the youngest. Mina turned around. Jiwon's face looked tired and worried. Everyone looked that way now. "Are we leaving too?" Mina asked. Jiwon knelt down to Mina's level. Her eyes were sad. "I don't know, little one. The grown-ups are talking about it." In the command center, Captain Doyen stood before a large screen showing red warnings everywhere. The fusion reactor was failing. The water recyclers were breaking down. The food stores would last maybe 2 more months. The mining equipment had stopped working weeks ago when the last engineer died in a cave-in that also took Mina's parents. "We have to face facts," Captain Doyen said to the 12 adults left in the colony. "We cannot stay here anymore. The transport ships can take us to the nearest station, but we have limited space and fuel." "What about the children?" asked Jiwon. "Hyon and Borum have family on the transport. They can go," said Doyen. "But Mina has no one. She would take up space that could go to someone who can work, someone who can help rebuild somewhere else." The room went quiet. Everyone knew what he meant, but no one wanted to say it out loud. "She's just a child," Jiwon said. "We cannot leave her here to die." "We cannot save everyone," replied Captain Doyun. His voice was hard, but his eyes showed pain. "If we take her, we might not have enough supplies for the journey. Then more people die. I have to think about the greatest number." "There has to be another way," said Yunsu, the colony's medic. "Show me another way and I will take it," Doyen said. "But we have run out of choices. The vote has been made. We leave in 3 days. The child stays." Jiwon felt tears in her eyes, but she knew arguing more would not change anything. The colony had become a place where only the useful could survive, and a 5-year-old girl could not fix machines or carry heavy loads. That night, Mina sat in her small room, playing with her only toy, a small metal spaceship her father had made for her. She did not understand why Jiwon had been crying, or why the other adults would not look at her anymore. "Mama, Papa," she whispered to the empty air. "Where are you? When are you coming back?" But her parents would never come back. They were buried under tons of rock and ice in Tunnel 7, along with their dreams of making this frozen world into a home. The next 2 days passed quickly. The colonists packed their few belongings and prepared the transport ships. Mina watched them work, still not understanding what was happening. Sometimes she asked if she could help, but the adults would just pat her head and tell her to go play. Honor. The last morning, Jiwon came to Mina's room early. She brought extra food and warm clothes. "Mina, listen to me carefully," Jiwon said. "We are going on a long trip, but you need to stay here a little longer." "Why can't I come?" Mina asked. Jiwon's hands shook as she packed the supplies. "Because someone needs to watch over the colony. You're going to be the guardian." "Will you come back for me?" Jiwon could not answer. Instead, she hugged Mina tight and whispered, "Be brave, little guardian. Be very brave." The transport engines roared to life outside. Through her window, Mina watched the adults walking toward the ships. She pressed her hand against the glass and waved, but most of them did not wave back. Captain Doyen was the last to board. He stood at the entrance to the transport and looked back at the colony buildings. For a moment, his hard expression softened, and he looked like he might change his mind. But then the engines grew louder, and he stepped inside. The ships lifted, off slowly, fighting against the planet's gravity. Mina ran through the corridors to the observation deck, still waving at the ships as they rose into the gray sky. The sound of the engines faded, and soon the ships were just small dots of light moving toward the stars. Then they were gone. Mina stood alone in the quiet colony. The heaters hummed softly, but already she could feel the cold creeping in. The lights flickered as the power system struggled without anyone to maintain them. She went back to her room and sat on her bed, holding her toy spaceship. The silence was complete now, broken only by the wind outside and the groaning of metal as the buildings settled in the cold. "I'm the guardian now," she said to herself, remembering Jiwon's words. She did not know what that meant, but it sounded important. Outside, the temperature began to drop as the planet's long winter night approached. The automated systems would keep working for a while, but without repairs and maintenance, they would fail one by one. Mina did not know that she had been left to die. She only knew that everyone had gone away, and she was supposed to watch over their home until they came back. So she waited, and the cold grew stronger, and the stars above Kepler 442c continued their ancient dance, indifferent to the small human child alone in the ice. Deep beneath the ice fields of Kepler 442c, something ancient stirred. The vibrations from the mining machines had been like gentle knocks on a door for months. But now, in the sudden silence that followed the humans' departure, a consciousness older than civilizations began to wake. Taeyang had been sleeping for 3,000 years. His kind, the Valthara, had chosen the long sleep when their sun grew dim and cold. They were dragon-like beings of immense power and knowledge, but even they could not fight the dying of stars. So they slept, waiting for better times that might never come. The dragon's massive form lay curled in a cavern of crystal and metal, far below the human colony. His scales were like polished obsidian, darker than space itself, but with veins of gold that pulsed with inner fire. He was as large as a building, with wings that could block out the sky and eyes like burning amber. As Taeyang's mind cleared from the depths of sleep, he felt the strange vibrations that had awakened him. The pattern was wrong. For months, the sounds had been steady, rhythmic. Now there was only the wind and the settling of structures above. Something had changed. He stretched his ancient senses upward, feeling through the ice and rock. The mining had stopped. The machines were silent. But there was still life above, a single small flame of warmth in the growing cold. A young life, alone and afraid. Taeyang's first thought was indifference. His people had never concerned themselves with the brief lives of lesser species. Humans were new to this galaxy, loud and clumsy, always breaking things. If they had abandoned one of their own, that was their nature. It was not his concern, but something about this situation puzzled him. The abandoned life was very young, very small. Even among humans, leaving a child alone was unusual, and the child's life force flickered like a candle in a storm, growing weaker as the cold increased. Days passed. Taeyang remained in his crystal chamber, but found himself checking on the small human more often. The child moved through the colony buildings, trying to keep warm, eating the food that had been left behind. She talked to herself, and sometimes she cried, but she did not give up. On the 7th day after the others left, the colony's main heater failed. The temperature inside the buildings began to drop rapidly. Taeyang felt the child's life force weakening faster now. In a few hours, maybe less, the cold would claim her. Still, he told himself it was not his concern. His people did not interfere with the natural order. If the child was meant to die alone in the ice, then that was her fate. But as the hours passed and the child's warmth grew dimmer, something unexpected happened. Taeyang felt disturbed, not by the approaching death itself, but by the terrible loneliness of it. The child had been abandoned by her own kind, left to face the end in complete solitude. Even the Valthara, for all their power and pride, did not die alone. They died surrounded by their clan with honor and ceremony. The thought of a young life ending in such isolation stirred something deep in Taeyang's ancient heart. Against his better judgment, he began to move. His massive form uncurled slowly, muscles stiff from millennia of sleep. The crystal chamber around him began to glow as his body heat increased. Ancient systems powered by his bioenergy flickered to life after 3,000 years of dormancy. Taeyang moved through the tunnels beneath the ice, passages his people had carved long ago. His progress was slow but determined. He had made a decision he did not fully understand, but it felt right in a way that surprised him. Above, Mina huddled in the colony's central hub, wrapped in every blanket she could find. Her breath came in white puffs, and her fingers were going numb despite her gloves. The walls were covered in frost now, and ice crystals grew on the inside of the windows. She was very scared, but she tried to remember what Jiwon had told her about being brave. She talked to her toy spaceship, pretending her parents were still there to listen. "It's very cold, Papa," she whispered through chattering teeth. "But I'm being a good guardian. I'm watching everything like Jiwon said." That was when the floor began to feel warm beneath her feet. At first, Mina thought she was imagining it. But slowly, surely, heat began to rise from below. The frost on the walls started to melt, dripping water onto the metal floors. The ice on the windows became thin and then disappeared entirely. Mina stood up, confused but grateful. She pressed her hands to the floor and felt steady, gentle warmth flowing up from somewhere deep underground. It was like the whole building was sitting on top of a huge heater. Outside, she could see steam rising from the ground around the colony buildings. The snow began to melt in patches, revealing the dark metal foundations beneath. Whatever was happening, it was big and it was powerful. But Mina was not afraid. The warmth felt safe, protective, like being wrapped in the strongest, gentlest embrace imaginable. For the first time since everyone had left, she felt truly safe. Deep below, Taeyang had positioned himself directly beneath the human colony. His massive body radiated heat through the rock and ice, turning the frozen ground into a source of life-giving warmth. It was a simple thing for one of his kind, but it would keep the small human alive. He told himself he was merely curious about this abandoned child. He wanted to see what she would do, how long she would survive with his help. It was an interesting experiment, nothing more. But as he felt her fear fade and her life force grow stronger in the warmth he provided, Taeyang knew he was lying to himself. Something about this small, brave, lonely creature had touched his ancient heart. For reasons he could not explain, he had chosen to protect her. The last of the Valthara had become the guardian of an abandoned human child. 3 years had passed since the humans abandoned Colony Station 7. The small girl named Mina was now 8 years old, and she was no longer the scared child who had watched the transport ships disappear into the sky. She had grown strong and clever under the strangest protection anyone could imagine. The colony looked different now. Where once there had been failing human technology, there were now smooth walls of crystal and metal that glowed with soft light. Passages had been carved that led deep underground, connecting the surface buildings to vast chambers below. The air was always warm and clean, and plants grew in gardens that should not have existed on this frozen world. Mina knew she was not alone, though she had never seen her guardian with her own eyes. She called him friend, because she did not know his real name. She talked to him every day, speaking to the walls and floors that always seemed to listen. Sometimes, she felt certain he was answering, though not with words she could hear. "Good morning, friend," Mina said as she woke in her warm bed. The room had grown around her as she got bigger, expanding and changing to meet her needs. "I think I will explore the blue chamber today. Is that okay?" The walls hummed softly, and she took that as permission. Deep below, Taeyang listened to the child's voice with something that might have been affection. Over the years, he had watched her grow from a frightened little girl into a brave young explorer. She had learned to use the basic controls he had provided, learned to tend the underground gardens, learned to fix simple things when they broke. More importantly, she had never lost her kindness. She talked to him like he was her dearest friend, thanked him for keeping her warm and safe, and sometimes sang songs that made the crystal chambers ring like bells. He had not known that such innocent joy could exist in the universe. But today, something would change. Taeyang's deep senses detected ships approaching the planet. 3 vessels, moving fast and scanning the surface. They had found the colony's energy signature and were coming to investigate. In the colony's control room, Mina was playing with the crystal displays when alarms began to sound. She had never heard these sounds before, and they frightened her. Red lights flashed on screens she had never seen active. "Friend?" she called out, her voice small. "What's happening?" The alarm stopped, but new images appeared on the screens. 3 dark ships were descending through the atmosphere, heading straight for the colony. Mina had dreamed of this moment for years, imagining that the colonists had returned for her. But these ships were different, rougher and meaner looking than the transports she remembered. The ships landed in the cleared area outside the colony. Armed figures in heavy suits stepped out, moving with the confidence of people who took what they wanted. Their leader was a tall man with cold eyes and scars on his face. His name was Hanbin, and he led a salvage crew that stripped abandoned colonies of anything valuable. "Scans show this place is still powered," Hanbin told his crew. "That means good salvage. Find the reactor, find the computers, find anything worth credits." They broke into the colony buildings easily. The doors had not been locked, because Mina had never needed to fear intruders before. She hid in the lower levels, watching them through crystal panels that let her see without being seen. The salvagers spread through the colony, amazed by what they found. The technology was unlike anything they had ever seen, far more advanced than standard human equipment. Equipment that could have made them rich beyond dreams. But then they found something even more interesting. Hanbin discovered Mina hiding in a storage room, trying to make herself as small as possible behind some supply crates. Well, Hanbin said, pulling her out into the light. "What do we have here? A little colony rat who survived all by herself." Mina trembled but tried to be brave. "Please don't hurt anything," she said. "Friend won't like it if you break things." Hanbin laughed. "Friend? You mean there's someone else here? Where are they hiding?" "Friend is everywhere," Mina said, which was the truth, but sounded like childish nonsense to the salvagers. Hanbin decided the girl might be useful. She clearly knew how to operate some of the strange technology in the colony. He put her to work immediately, forcing her to crawl into narrow spaces to disconnect power cables and remove valuable components. Mina did what they told her, but she kept talking to her friend. "They're hurting the pretty things you made," she whispered when the salvagers couldn't hear. "They're being mean to your gifts." Deep below, Taeyang felt his anger growing like a fire in his chest. He had remained hidden, thinking the intruders would take what they wanted and leave, but they were forcing his small protected one to help them destroy her home. They were making her afraid again, after years of safety and peace. The salvagers worked for 2 days, growing more excited as they discovered room after room of impossible technology. But they also grew more frustrated as their equipment began to malfunction. Power tools stopped working. Scanners gave false readings. Containers became too heavy to lift even when they appeared empty. "This place is cursed," muttered Yunji, the only woman on Hanbin's crew. She had noticed how the little girl seemed to talk to empty air, and how sometimes the air seemed to listen. "Don't be stupid," Hanbin snapped. "It's just electromagnetic interference. We'll work around it." But the problems got worse. Their ship's engines started having trouble. Communication equipment failed. Even their weapons began to show error codes. Hanbin's patience was wearing thin, and when he lost his temper, he took it out on the person who couldn't fight back. "You're causing this somehow," he accused Mina, grabbing her roughly by the arm. "What are you doing to our equipment?" "Nothing," Mina said truthfully. "Please let go, you're hurting me." "I'll show you hurt." Hanbin raised his hand, ready to strike a child who had never done anything worse than exist in the wrong place at the wrong time. That was when the temperature in the room began to rise. The walls started to glow with veins of gold light. The floor beneath their feet grew warm, then hot. The salvagers looked around in sudden fear as they realized they were standing in the middle of something far beyond their understanding. And in the depths below, the last of the Felthera decided that he had seen enough. The moment Hanbin raised his hand to strike Mina, everything changed. The golden veins in the walls blazed brighter, and a sound like distant thunder began to rumble through the colony buildings. The salvagers froze as they felt something immense stirring beneath their feet. Mina stepped back from Hanbin, her eyes wide. She had never felt her friend angry before, but now she could sense his fury like heat from a forge. It scared her, but not for herself. She was worried about what might happen to the people who had been hurting her. "Friend, don't be too angry," she whispered to the glowing walls. "They don't understand." But Taiyang was beyond listening to pleas for mercy. For 3 years he had protected this child, watched her grow, felt pride in her strength and kindness. No one would harm her while he drew breath. The time for hiding was over. The floor of the colony began to crack. Not the dangerous cracks of a building falling apart, but precise lines that formed patterns of incredible complexity. Steam rose from the cracks, carrying with it the scent of ancient fire and the deep earth. Hanbin's crew backed away from the glowing fissures, their weapons ready but useless against something they could not understand. "Boss," said one of them, "maybe we should get back to the ship." "Nobody moves," Hanbin snarled, though his own voice shook. "This is just some kind of defense system. We can handle it." He was wrong. This was not a machine or a program. This was 3,000 years of accumulated power and wisdom, awakened to terrible purpose. This was the wrath of the last dragon. The cracks in the floor spread wider, and through them came light that hurt to look at directly. The light was not white or yellow, but the deep gold of molten metal, the fierce orange of stars being born, and with the light came heat that made the air shimmer like water. Then Taeyang rose from the depths. He came up slowly, magnificently, like a mountain growing from the earth. First his great head appeared, larger than the salvage crew's entire ship. His scales were black as space between stars, but traced with veins of living gold that pulsed with his heartbeat. His eyes were like amber suns, ancient and terrible and beautiful. The salvagers could only stare in shock and terror as more of the dragon emerged. His neck was long and graceful, his shoulders broad enough to carry buildings. His wings, still, folded against his back, cast shadows that covered half the colony. He was power made visible, majesty given form. When Taiyang spoke, his voice was like controlled avalanches, like the patient grinding of tectonic plates. It came not just from his throat, but from the very walls around them, as if the colony itself had found its voice. "You have harmed the one under my protection," he said, each word measured and final. "For this, you will answer." Hanbin tried to raise his weapon, but it crumbled to dust in his hands. The metal simply broke apart, corroded by energies he could not comprehend. Around him, his crew's equipment suffered the same fate. Guns, scanners, tools all reduced to powder and rust in seconds. "Impossible," Hanbin breathed. "You're just a big lizard, you can't be real." Taeyang's great head turned toward him, and Hanbin felt the weight of that ancient gaze. It was like being examined by the universe itself, found wanting and marked for judgment. "I am Taeyang of the Valthara," the dragon said. "I am older than your species' first fire. I have seen the birth of stars and the death of worlds. And you, small creature, have threatened my ward." The dragon's power reached out like invisible hands. One by one, the salvagers found themselves lifted off the ground, held suspended in fields of force that tingled against their skin. All except Yunji, who had tried to be kind to Mina. She stood untouched while her companions floated helplessly, in the air. "I could end you in 1,000 ways," Taeyang continued, his voice growing deeper and more dangerous. "I could turn your bones to glass, your blood to steam. I could cast you into the void between stars, or bury you in the heart of this world. But I am not without mercy." He gestured with one massive claw, and suddenly the salvagers were dressed in simple survival suits, their weapons and dangerous equipment gone, replaced with basic food and water supplies. "You will leave this place," Taeyang commanded. "You will return to your people and tell them what you have seen. Tell them that this world and this child are under the protection of powers they cannot imagine." Tell them that any who come here with violence or greed will face the same judgment you have faced today." The force fields around the salvagers began to move, carrying them toward their ship like leaves on an invisible wind. Hanbin struggled against the power that held him, but it was like trying to fight gravity itself. "This isn't over, monster," he shouted. "The Confederation will hear about this. They'll send the fleet, they'll bring weapons that can crack planets." Taiyang's expression might have been amusement, if dragons could smile. "Let them come," he said. "I have waited 3,000 years for entertainment." The salvagers were deposited none too gently inside their ship. Their computers came online long enough to show them a navigation course away from the planet, then shut down again. The engines started on their own, lifting the ship into the sky whether the crew wanted to leave or not. Only Yunji was allowed to control her own departure. Before she left, she looked back at the colony where the massive dragon still loomed over the buildings like a guardian mountain. "The girl," she called out. "Will she be safe with you?" Taiyang's great head turned toward her, and for a moment his terrible eyes were gentle. "She is the light of my long darkness," he said. "No harm will come to her while I exist." Yunji nodded and activated her ship's engines. As she lifted off, she saw Mina run out of the colony buildings, small and fearless, to wave goodbye. The child looked so tiny next to the enormous dragon, but Yunji could see the love and protection that surrounded her like armor. When the ships were gone, Taeyang slowly lowered himself back toward the earth, but he did not disappear into the tunnels as he had before. Instead, he arranged his great form around the colony buildings like a living wall. His wings spread to shelter them from the eternal wind. Mina ran up to his massive front foot and pressed, her small hands against his warm scales. "Thank you, friend," she said. "I knew you would protect me." "Always, little one," Taeyang said, his voice now gentle as summer rain. "I will always protect you." For the first time in 3 years, Mina could see her guardian clearly. He was more magnificent than she had ever imagined, terrible and beautiful and kind all at once. She was not afraid of his size or his power. She had felt his love for too long to fear him now. "Can I see your home now?" she asked. "The deep places you showed me in the crystal pictures?" "Yes," Taeyang said. "I think it is time you learned about both our peoples, yours and mine. You are the bridge between us now, little guardian. You must know both worlds to understand your place in the universe." And as the stars came out above Kepler 442c, a dragon began to teach a human child the secrets of the cosmos, preparing her for a destiny neither of them could yet imagine. 8 years had passed since the salvage crew fled from Kepler 442c, with tales of an ancient dragon protecting a human child. The story had spread through every space station, every trade route, every gathering place where travelers shared impossible stories over cheap drinks. They called it the legend of the ice dragon. Some said it was a ghost story, made up to keep salvagers away from a particularly rich find. Others claimed it was real but grew more fantastic with each telling. By now, the dragon was said to be the size of a mountain, able to destroy fleets, with a thought, guarding treasures beyond imagination. What none of the stories got right was the truth. The dragon was not guarding treasure. He was raising a child. Mina was 16 now, tall and strong, with eyes that held knowledge far beyond her years. She moved through the transformed colony with the confidence of someone completely at home. In her world, the buildings above ground were now just the smallest part of her domain. Below the ice stretched vast chambers carved from living rock, filled with gardens that bloomed in eternal spring, workshops where Valthara technology shaped matter like clay, and libraries that held the wisdom of a species older than human, civilization. "Good morning, Taiyang," she said as she entered the great central chamber where the dragon often rested. She no longer called him friend. She had learned his true name years ago, along with the history of his people and the responsibility that came with being the last keeper of their knowledge. The dragon raised his massive head and regarded her, with eyes that sparkled with affection. "Good morning, little star. How do you feel today?" "Ready," she said simply. "You've taught me everything about your people and mine. I can operate the deep systems, navigate by starlight, and speak in 17 languages, including Old Velthera. I think I'm ready to see what lies beyond our world. Taeyang had been expecting this conversation for months. Mina was no longer a child to be protected, but a young woman with her own will and destiny. He had seen the restlessness in her, the curiosity about the wider universe that no amount of ancient wisdom could satisfy. The universe beyond this world is not kind to those who are different, he said carefully. Your own species abandoned you. Other species might see you as a threat because of what you can do. Maybe, Mina agreed. But hiding here forever won't change anything. The stories are already spreading. Soon someone will come looking for the truth behind the legend. Wouldn't it be better if I went out to meet the universe instead of waiting for it to find us? Before Taeyang could answer, alarms began sounding in the upper levels. Not the harsh warnings of the old human system, but the subtle harmonics of Valthara sensors detecting approaching vessels. Many vessels, moving in military formation. Mina ran to the nearest control crystal and placed her hands on its surface. The chamber around them filled with holographic displays showing the space around Kepler 442c. A full Terran Confederation fleet was dropping out of hyperspace. 12 warships arranged in a defensive formation around a command vessel nearly the size of a small city. They've come at last, Taeyang said, though he did not sound surprised. Your people have decided to investigate the legend for themselves. On the bridge of the TCS Endeavour, Admiral Sung-ho studied the readings from the planet's surface. The energy signatures were unlike anything in Confederation records, clearly indicating technology far beyond current human capabilities. Sir, reported the sensor operator, we're detecting massive power sources beneath the surface. Whatever's down there, it's been active for years. Beside him, Dr. Yuna checked her xenobiology scanners. I'm reading one large non-human life form and one smaller signature that appears to be human. Both are located in the same underground complex. Admiral Sung-ho frowned. The reports from the salvage crew had been dismissed as fantasy by most of the Confederation leadership, but certain details had been too specific to ignore. The advanced technology, the protective behavior, the specific threats made against anyone who harmed the human child. Civilian Advisor Ji-won, he called to an elderly woman standing at the back of the bridge. You knew this colony before it was abandoned. What can you tell us about the survivor down there? Ji-won stepped forward, her aged face creased with worry and guilt that had haunted her for 11 years. She had volunteered for this mission the moment she learned of it, driven by the hope that the child she had failed to save might somehow still be alive. Her name was Mina, Ji-won said quietly. She was 5 years old when we left her. If she survived, she would be 16 now. She was always brave, always curious. But Admiral, if the stories are true, if something has been protecting her all, these years we need to approach this very carefully. Agreed, said Admiral Sung-ho. We'll send down a small diplomatic team first. No weapons, no threats. If there really is a child down there who survived alone for over a decade, she's been through enough trauma already. But Mina was no longer the traumatized child they expected to find. In the depths of the colony, she stood before Taeyang, in robes that seemed to be cut from starlight itself, her hands glowing with the subtle energy that came from years of working with Valthara technology. They've come to take me away, she said, though her voice held no fear, only sadness. They believe they have that right, Taeyang replied. To them, you are still human. Still one of theirs to command and control. Am I still human? Mina asked. It was a question that had troubled her more and more as she learned to manipulate energy fields and commune with machines that thought like living beings. Sometimes I feel like something new, something that doesn't fit in either world. You are exactly what you were always meant to be, Taeyang said gently. You are the bridge between what was and what could be. Your people abandoned you, but in doing so they gave you the gift of becoming something greater than either species alone. The communication system crackled to life, carrying a message from the fleet above. This is Admiral Sung-ho of the Terran Confederation. We know there is a human survivor on the surface. We've come to offer assistance and safe passage to a Confederation world. Please respond. Mina looked at the communication panel, then at Taiyang. What should I tell them? Tell them the truth, the dragon said. Tell them that the child they abandoned has grown into someone they never expected. Tell them that if they want to meet you, they must come with respect, not as conquerors but as guests. Mina activated the communicator. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that no human throat should have been able to produce, underscored by the deep power that came from years of learning Velthara vocal techniques. This is Mina of Colony Station 7, she said. I am the one you abandoned 11 years ago. I am the one the dragon saved. If you wish to meet me, you may send 3 representatives, no more. They will come unarmed and in peace, or they will not come at all. On the bridge of the Endeavor, the crew stared at their communication equipment in stunned silence. The voice that had answered them was undeniably human, but it carried undertones of power that made the ship's hull vibrate in sympathy. Sir, whispered the sensor operator. Those harmonics, they're resonating with our quantum cores. Whatever she's doing, she's affecting our systems from the surface. Admiral Sung-ho felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. They had come expecting to rescue a traumatized child and perhaps make contact with a new alien species. Instead, they had found something that defied all their expectations. The abandoned child had grown into something that could command their technology with her voice alone. Prepare a diplomatic shuttle, he ordered. I'll go down myself along with Dr. Yuna and civilian advisor Ji-won, and make sure every sensor on this ship is recording. Something tells me this meeting is going to change everything we think we know about human potential. The diplomatic shuttle descended through the atmosphere of Kepler 442c like a falling star. Admiral Sung-ho gripped his seat as the craft shook in the planet's fierce winds, but his eyes remained fixed on the view screen showing the surface below. Where the old colony records showed a cluster of failing buildings on barren ice, he now saw something that looked like a jewel set in crystal. The colony had been transformed into something beautiful and impossible. Spires of living crystal rose from gardens that bloomed in defiance of the eternal winter. Streams of warm water flowed in geometric patterns, their heat creating clouds of steam that caught the light like rainbows. At the center of it all stood structures that seemed to grow from the earth itself, organic curves mixed with precise angles that hurt the mind to contemplate. My God, breathed Dr. Yuna. The energy readings are off the charts. This level of terraforming should take centuries, not decades. Beside them, Ji-won pressed her hands to the window and wept. The desolate world where they had left a 5-year-old child to die had become a paradise. Either Mina was dead and they were looking at her tomb, or something miraculous had happened in the years since their abandonment. The shuttle set down in a cleared area near the central spires. As the engines powered down, the 3 humans prepared to step out into what might be their first contact with an alien intelligence. Admiral Sung-ho had faced hostile fleets and negotiated with species that barely considered humans sentient. But he had never felt as nervous as he did now. The airlock opened and they stepped out into air that was warm and clean and smelled of growing things. The gravity was standard, the atmosphere breathable, as if the entire world had been adjusted to make humans comfortable. Welcome, said a voice behind them. They turned and saw her. Mina stood in the entrance to the nearest spire, and she was nothing like what they had expected. She was tall and graceful, dressed in robes that seemed to shift color as she moved. Her dark hair fell to her shoulders and seemed to contain tiny points of light, like stars caught in silk. But it was her eyes that stopped them cold. They were human eyes, warm and intelligent and kind, but they held depths that spoke of knowledge beyond her years. You came, she said, and her voice carried those same impossible harmonics they had heard over the communication system. I wasn't sure you would. Admiral Sung-ho stepped forward, his training taking over. I am Admiral Sung-ho of the Terran Confederation. This is Dr. Yuna, our chief xenobiologist, and civilian advisor Ji-won. We've come to offer you safe passage to a Confederation world and to make contact with the entity that has been protecting you. Mina's gaze moved to Ji-won, and for a moment the cosmic power in her eyes gave way to simple human emotion. Hello, Teacher Ji-won. You look older. Ji-won collapsed to her knees, overwhelmed by grief and relief. Mina, child, I am so sorry. We thought we believed you would die. We should never have left you. I fought for you, but I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't brave enough. I know, Mina said gently. Taiyang showed me the colony records. I know you tried to save me. I know you cried when you had to leave. I forgave you long ago. She walked over and helped Jiwon to her feet. And in that simple gesture of kindness, the three visitors saw the child she had once been. But they also saw the power she had become, the way reality seemed to bend slightly around her, the way the very air grew warmer in her presence. Taiyang? Asked Dr. Yuna. Is that the name of your protector? Yes, Mina said. Would you like to meet him? He's been curious about you as well. Before they could answer, the ground began to tremble, but it was not the violent shaking of an earthquake. It was rhythmic, purposeful, like the footsteps of something immense approaching. The spires around them began to glow with veins of golden light, and the air itself seemed to thrum with anticipation. Then Taiyang emerged from the depths. He rose like a living mountain, his massive form uncoiling from passages too large to be natural. The three humans could only stare in awe and terror as the dragon revealed himself in all his ancient majesty. He was larger than their shuttle, larger than some of the buildings they had seen. His black scales caught the light and threw it back, in patterns too complex for human minds to follow, while his golden eyes regarded them with intelligence that had contemplated the universe since before their species learned to use fire. I am Taiyang, last of the Valtera, the dragon said, his voice resonating through their bones. I am the one who found your abandoned child and chose to save her life. Admiral Sungho had faced down alien warlords and hostile first contacts, but he had never felt as small as he did standing before this ancient being. We came to thank you for protecting her and to offer her safe passage to rejoin her people. Taiyang's great head tilted slightly, and something that might have been amusement flickered in his cosmic gaze. Her people? Tell me, Admiral, what people would those be? The ones who left a child to freeze to death because she could not contribute to their survival? The ones who valued equipment and supplies more than an innocent life? The words hit like physical blows. Admiral Sungho felt the weight of his species' guilt settling on his shoulders, but he pressed on. We acknowledge that a terrible mistake was made, but Mina is human. She belongs with her own kind, learning human culture, living a human life. Does she? Taiyang asked. Tell me, Dr. Yuna, what do your sensors say about the child you see before you? Dr. Yuna checked her readings, and her face went pale. The genetic structure is human, but the energy patterns, the harmonic resonance, it's like nothing I've ever seen. She's registering as both human and something else entirely. She is what your species could become, Taiyang said. She is the bridge between worlds, raised with the knowledge of the Valtera but retaining the heart of humanity. She is something new, something precious, something your people created through their cruelty and I preserved through my love. Mina stepped between the dragon and the humans, her small form somehow commanding attention despite standing next to a being the size of a building. The choice is mine to make, she said firmly. I am grateful to all of you. Taiyang, you saved my life and taught me wonders I never could have imagined. You gave me love when I had nothing, and hope when the universe seemed empty. She turned to the three humans. And you, my birth people, you gave me life and the foundation of who I am. Your abandonment taught me the value of loyalty, and your return gives me hope that species can grow beyond their failures. Admiral Sungho felt a chill as he realized what she was about to say. You're not coming with us. I cannot abandon my guardian as I was once abandoned, Mina said. But neither will I turn my back on humanity entirely. I offer you something different, a partnership, a chance to learn from each other. She gestured to the transformed colony around them. This world could be a meeting place, a place where human and Valthara knowledge combined to create something neither could achieve alone. I could teach your scientists things that would advance your civilization by centuries. In return, you could bring news of the galaxy trade cultural exchange. The Confederation would never agree to that, Admiral Sungho said automatically. They'd want to study you, understand how you've been changed, replicate the process. Then they would find themselves very disappointed. Taeyang rumbled dangerously. The child is under my protection always. Any attempt to take her by force will result in consequences your people cannot imagine. But Mina raised her hand, and incredibly, the ancient dragon fell silent. There is another way, she said. A way that serves everyone's interests. She walked to the center of the group and raised her hands. The air around them shimmered, and suddenly they were surrounded by holographic displays showing star maps, technical readouts, and data that made Dr. Yuna gasp in recognition. I offer humanity a gift, Mina said. Not the secrets of the Velthera, which are not mine to give, but something new created from the joining of our peoples. Medical advances that could eliminate disease, energy systems that could power worlds, without destroying them, agricultural techniques that could end hunger across the galaxy. The displays showed impossible things made real, technologies that could transform human civilization, while remaining clearly achievable with current understanding, just approached from angles no human had ever considered. All of this I give freely, Mina continued, with only one condition. That humanity learns to value the vulnerable, the abandoned, the different. That you become a people who protect rather than discard, who lift up rather than leave behind. Admiral. Sungo stared at the displays, knowing that what he was seeing could change the course of human history, but he also understood the weight of the choice being offered. Accept the gift and humanity would have to confront the moral failure that had created this situation in the first place. I don't have the authority to make this decision, he said finally. Then bring those who do, Mina said simply. I will be here, as I have always been here. The abandoned child you left to die has grown into someone who can save your species from itself, if you let her. Jiwon stepped forward, tears streaming down her aged face. You've become something wonderful, child. Something far greater than any of us imagined possible. I am proud of you and I am sorry for what we did.